Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, I asked for 3 days off. They asked for a doctor's note, so I have way more than 3 days off. My job is very mentally taxing. I also have my own mental health issues, so I try my best to balance, but I just want to help, so I get caught up taking more responsibilities than I am actually able to. So a couple of weeks ago I realized my mental health is in steep decline. I was ignoring the signs to push through, but anyone with mental health issues knows that you can only ignore the signs for so long. I try to get ahead of a mental crash and talk to my supervisor to tell them that I need 3 days off. What the duck, and as I had the weekend off after the days I requested, I figured that might be enough to get a good rest and reset. I did tell my supervisor why I needed the days, burnout, mental health, and they said they understood and would get back to me. They contact me back. I say they because right now I technically have 2 supervisors running my division, and say they can probably give me Wednesday, Thursday, but that they couldn't give me Friday. I ask if we can do Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday instead, and I could work the Friday, have my long weekend, and that should still be fine. They say they will get back to me. I get a text soon after to ask me to help cover other shifts. And I obviously can't, so I decline. They get back to me the next day. We can get your shifts covered for Wednesday and Thursday, but not Tuesday, and you have to make up the hours. That was the straw. I just broke. I was asking for a break because I was working too much, because it was hard for me to say no. I even call them. They had me on speaker, in tears, and explain even further why I need the days. I have been going through trauma therapy and my mental health has been declining. I had told them that I had spoken to my doctor and that my doctor said I was showing signs of burnout and recommended some days off, which is true, as I had talked to him the day before. All they heard was doctor and said, we need a doctor's note. Okay, fine, good thing I have another appointment. I had to work the day, just defeated because they couldn't find anyone to cover my shifts. I talked to my doctor and he says that he can tell I'm in distress, and he puts me on 2 weeks of leave immediately. They did not look pleased when I handed in my doctor's note. That was 2 weeks ago. I went back to the doctor and he extended my leave for at least another month. Because straw broke the camel's back and my mental health just went down the drain. Oh, also, when I gave them my doctor's note with 4 weeks on it, one of them wouldn't even look at me and the other just said, oh, doctor's note, thanks. Edit 1, for all those asking, no, I am not in America. And I was able to apply for sickness benefits. Edit 2, I can't thank everyone enough for the support, it is immensely encouraging. My husband has been reading your lovely comments. I wish I could reply to them all. For everyone having their own struggles and still being so kind, it is very appreciated, and I'm hoping everyone gets what they need to recover, get better. Next one is titled, Rolling the Dice on a Mortgage. A few years back my company transferred me from TX to NJ. My wife and I found a house we liked and signed a contract on it. At the time mortgage rates were sky high, 13%, and the builder was offering a subsidized mortgage at 10.5%. It was a new house and was in the process of being built, and we applied for the mortgage through his bank. About 2 to 3 weeks before closing, the builder's agent calls me and says they were no longer dealing with the original bank and I would need to reapply for a mortgage with a different bank at 12.5% interest. Huh? I dug out my contract, and although we had been promised a 10.5% rate, it was not written into the contract. So I was pretty much stuck. Or was I? The contract, as most real estate contracts are, was contingent on us qualifying for a mortgage. So I called the agent back and advised him that we would do as he requested, except unfortunately we were not likely to qualify for the new mortgage. He chuckled and asked why not. The original bank said we were well qualified. I told him that was true, based on the info they had. But in the interim, my wife has opted not to work, so any income from her is no longer available. And we also decided to spend a large part of our down payment on a European vacation. So without the second income and most of the down payment, new bank's not gonna like us so much. As it stood, the builder would now be stuck with a fully built house which included all the extras we had personally picked out. Obviously he could try and resell the house, but who knows how long it would take to find a buyer who wanted this specific house, when they could buy a new one and pick out extras and fixtures to their own taste. Anyway, the builder must have felt the same way, as within an hour we suddenly were told we could continue on with the original bank at the 10.5% interest rate. Edit, yes, a few years back was exactly 1980, as some of you have surmised. And as for refinancing, I'm long since gone from that house. But for you young'uns, interest rates on a mortgage did run 13% or 13.5% back then. To see 3+% rates these days boggles my mind. Next one is titled, Narcissistic Dad Asked for Help but Didn't Receive the Help That's Needed. There are about 10 sheets of metal to place on the roof in the next couple of weeks once the rain dies down, and for the meantime they are lying down on the driveway. It's about 1 meter by 10 meters and they aren't really in anyone's way. Dad called me out to move them to the side, standing on its edge. Now I'm glad to help, always willing to give a helping hand even if it's something I don't think is right. But nonetheless I gave my opinion, saying they manufacture and even deliver these on the face so the edges don't get damaged. They also gave us a free sheet due to the nature of them getting damaged. I told him that they aren't intruding in anyone's way and think we should just keep it there, however he insisted we move it, to which I obliged. My dad is one of those people that you can't carry large objects with. I.e. he moves too quickly or slowly for your pace, he holds them awkwardly or demands them only be held a certain way. We started to pick up the metal, but due to the size and dimensions, they are quite heavy and flimsy, so I told him to settle down and work with me. As we are placing them vertically, he says I am not moving fast enough, as if we are in a rush anywhere, and pushes the sheet metal fast enough to cut my hand. I again insisted maybe he should follow my directions so we can try and work with this, however he was adamant my idea was wrong before even hearing it. At one point my mum joined in to give me a hand dealing with his crap, cause we all know he is like this sometimes. We pick up one sheet and while moving to the place we are putting them, my dad just yells, "Dad, you're pathetic and you can't help whatsoever." Me, "You're right, I never saw it that way. You would be better moving this without me." Dad, "Fine, duck off then." I go inside, drink some tea and my mum join as my dad struggles to move the metal. After about 2 minutes he comes back and asks for help, but I just tell him I really wish I could, but I'm pathetic. Maybe others might help. Next one is titled, You Want to Speak to the Supervisor? While in college I worked as the escalated transfer supervisor at a call center for a large Canadian pizza chain. One New Year's Eve it was so busy in the call center that the customer service department started taking orders to ease the traffic, myself included. Suddenly I get connected with Karen. Before I even have a chance to speak she is already irate and rude. K, why in the hell was I on hold for 30 minutes? Me, MME, I apologize for the wait, but it's New Year's Eve and everyone in the country is ordering pizza. K, that is unacceptable, I demand to speak to a customer service agent. Me, I can transfer you if you'd like, but I am in the customer service department and can talk to you about your complaint. K, like hell you are. Transfer me to customer service immediately. Me, okay, but due to the busy day, you may be on hold for a while. K, I said now. So I added her to my customer service queue, which was 20 calls deep. After 30 minutes, she is up. Me, hi, you've reached company name customer service, my name is Superfla, how may I help you? K, yelling, I was on hold for 30 minutes waiting. Hold on, wasn't I just speaking to you? Me, yes MME. K, still yelling, this is outrageous, I insist on speaking to the manager. Me, absolutely, please hold. And add her to my queue once again. Now keep in mind that the escalated transfer supervisor, me, is the final stage of customer service, so when a customer asks for a manager, the ETS was the end of the line. I continue to take orders for another 25 minutes or so, then pick up Karen's call. Me, hi there, you've reached Superfla, I believe you asked to speak to a manager, how can I help? K, in a desperate tone, you're the manager too? Me, yes MME, you see because it is so busy, I have been taking calls all day to ease the traffic and make things run a little quicker. K, oh my goodness, I've been waiting for over an hour. Me, I did tell you that I could help when I took your initial call. K, you did. Me, would you like me to take your order now? K, yes. It was so satisfying to let all the air out of her like that. Next one is titled, well, she asked me to shut up. I, 20 female, had a liver transplant and my large intestine removed 2 years ago after 6 years of autoimmune hell. I had an issue with my liver and gut, as you can probably tell. I'd tried every medicine, one of which cost £4,500 per dose, and nothing was working. Eventually they realized my liver had to be changed, and my gut had to go. It was pretty traumatic for me. Not only was I terrified that if this also didn't work, I had no options. I spent most of my time in a tiny room, was in horrific amounts of pain, my new stoma bag kept bursting and was dealing with the fact that I would have to put off university by about 2 years, hopefully going this October. On top of all this, there was a nurse who hated me. I guess she was used to older patients or saw me as undeserving of my transplant. Or maybe just didn't like the fact that I needed lots of attention due to the fact I was having issues with my kidney post-transplant. All the other nurses were lovely, by the way. It was just her who had a stick up her butt. One day, when she was looking after me, I was in floods of tears. It had been building for a while. I was stressed, in pain and unhappy. It was the only time I cried the entire 3 months I was in hospital. I'd been there for a couple of months before the procedure due to my pesky gut. She walked in on me crying. She shut the door, rolled her eyes and started shouting at me. The conversation went like this. Nurse, why are you crying? You're going to make me feel bad because I can't look after you properly. Me, it's just stress. It's nothing to do with you. Nurse, oh, then can you stop please before the doctors come in? You'll make me look bad. Me, a little shocked, but it's got nothing to do with you. She was probably stressed when she said this next part, but it still hurt like a bitch to hear. Nurse, shut up. You're not the important one. Only make a noise if I allow you. Cue malicious compliance. I stopped talking, all the way through until the doctors came. Again, I was highly unstable at this point, so they needed to know how I was feeling. But I wouldn't answer any of their questions. When they asked why, I simply wrote, "Ask nurse," on my phone and showed them. The head doctor went to find her, whilst the others stayed with me, door shut. I heard vague shouting noises from the hallway around 5 minutes later. The doctor brought her in and she accused me of lying. And I repeated word for word what she said earlier. It would have been my word against hers, if she hadn't cursed under her breath, so she kinda ducked herself. She apologized. I got my ward round done and I think she took some time off or requested to not be my nurse again, because I didn't even see her again in the rest of the 3-week stay I had left. Next one is titled, Underinformed Manager vs Employee, Police. This happened in England, United Kingdom 10 to 12 years ago. I used to work as a support worker in a dual diagnosis mental health unit, substance misuse plus a confirmed mental health diagnosis. Along with this role I volunteered as a special constable, volunteer police officer, which is relevant later. My care manager, Sham, got promoted to unit manager and employed an underqualified person, Joanne, in his previous role. Care managers are the direct supervisor to all the nursing staff, responsible for rotas etc. So how the situation started is I arrested a person for an offense and he was charged to court and plead not guilty. I was then given 6 weeks notice of the upcoming court case. In the UK, if you are required to attend court, you are allowed to take unpaid days off. The courts will then reimburse your basic pay. This is to encourage attendance from witnesses and victims. I go to Joanne and tell her about my upcoming court dates. Joanne tells me I'll need to submit annual leave to get those dates off. I tell her she's incorrect and inform her that Sham used to just give them me as my days off. So instead of getting 2 days off and then having to cover further days as well. 2 birds, 1 stone. I didn't mind and it helped everyone out. So Joanne stood firm that I needed to submit leave despite policy stating what I tried to tell her. Unfortunately, our company had a reputation for putting rotas out at last minute. So our rota got released on a Friday for the follow week. The rota comes out, my court date is Wednesday and I've been placed on nights Tuesday and Wednesday. I decided to go above Joanne to Sham, but she keeps taking his calls. Finally she plays silly and asks, "What do you want Sham for?" Me, "You haven't given me my court date off." J, "I told you 6 weeks ago you needed to put annual leave in." Me, "I told you 6 weeks ago that I didn't and even told you the unit policy." J, "Well, you should have submitted leave like I said. It's too late now. Me, "I'm letting you know that I'm not coming in on either the Tuesday or Wednesday now. I'm taking unpaid leave." Hung up the phone. Malicious compliance is I only requested Tuesday night off before court, but because of her behavior I took all that I was entitled to, day before and the day off court. So I didn't turn up for my shifts, no one even attempted to call me, and went to court on Wednesday. Guy got found guilty and I was back at work Friday, but Joanna didn't work nights, thankfully. I look in my pigeonhole, like a work letter box, to find a strongly worded letter from Joanna about my tone when speaking with her on the phone. Nothing mentioned about failing to attend 2 shifts. I go into the care office to find Joanna on our next crossover shift, where she is taking handover with the rest of the day shift, and tell her to keep her letter because it isn't worth the paper it's written on, couldn't be disciplined. Thankfully she didn't last long and moved on. Next one is titled, "I ran nuts at the county fair." I have been looking back at my adventures as a kid and have come to the sad, sorry, conclusion that I was a bit of a brat. Now that I've confessed that, let me take you back to 1977. John Travolta and disco were setting the world on fire and I was 8 years old. I live in a largely agricultural province in Canada, and every year, before the world went to hell, we would have a huge provincial fair. It had the typical animal barns, pie and craft judging, prizes for the best livestock, a midway and food. Lots of food. Back when I was in school, the province was keen on expanding educational and enrichment opportunities for the school kids. One thing that was included in their scheme was a free day at the fair for every kid in grade 3. I am not sure why they chose grade 3, but there you go. The day included free admission, lunch, rides at the midway and a treat. Pretty amazing for an 8-year-old short person, so I eagerly took my permission slip home and on the appointed day, happily boarded the bus with the other kids. We arrived at the exhibition center and were signed in. The day was going great, until we got to the barns and the cows. Now I need to step back here and tell you I was a country girl. The majority of my family lived on farms with various livestock. As a result, from the time I could toddle around a barnyard, I was taught 2 things. Don't upset the animals and never walk behind a cow or a horse. Stepping back to the fair. Our clueless teacher had apparently never been taught these important rules and decided it would be a great idea to 20 excited kids into the barns along with about 300 other excited kids from the various schools in the area. Insert freaked out animals here, and I'm not talking bunnies and chickens. Hell no. They took us into the large animal barns with cows, horses and 1,500 pounds Clydesdales. I knew in my soul this was a bad idea, so I hung back at the back of the crowd. Teacher, wafer, hurry up. Get a move on. Me, eyeing the 3 feet wide butts of the nearby Clydes and shaking my head, nope. Teacher, grabbing my hand, I said join the class. Now keep up. She led us through the horse barn and into the cattle shed. At this point, the day was about to turn very interesting. That brainless woman looked around the cattle shed at the crowds of kids and teachers, spied the door she wanted and decided it would be a brilliant idea to take her group of kiddos behind the cows. She ordered the class to line up, take hands and skipped merrily down a narrow aisle of space between the wall and about 40 cow butts. I flat refused to go. Looked up at her and said nope. The equally clueless mothers who had come along to help tried to get me to go. Not happening. They coaxed. I shook my head. They tugged my hand. I dug my sneakers into the dirt floor and refused to budge. My dad and uncles loomed large in my mind, telling me never walk behind a cow. Finally, they gave up in disgust and told me to meet them on the other side and walked off, leaving 8-year-old me alone in a big barn filled with random people. Compliance. Now I was a stubborn little crap. I knew I had to get to the end if the row of cattle, but there was no way in hell I was walking behind those cows. So I walked off down the main aisle in the general direction the teacher was headed. Unfortunately, instead of finding my class at the other end, I found myself in the Innovations Hall. Bright lights and booths full of fascinating things to look at. I looked around for my fellow shorties, but they were nowhere to be seen, so I shrugged and decided to have fun. I was happily looking at a display kitchen when another kid, also alone, came up to me. "Kid, lost your class." Me, "Yup, you." Kid, "Yup." We grinned at each other, and what followed was a day that lives in infamy. We spent the next several hours exploring the fair, patting the pigs and goats. We got our free lunch, rode some rides, and shared some candy floss. To this day, I have no idea how we weren't caught. At 3 p.m., the bell rang and a voice over the PA told the schools the buses were waiting, so we wandered out to the front and found our teachers. Mine, of course, was upset. Looking back, I can't blame her, but really, what kind of idiot tells kids to walk behind 700-pound animals with sharp hooves? I thought my day at the fair was great and was very excited to tell my parents and siblings at the supper table all about it. I remember being confused at my father's rage at the teacher. Funny, but she wasn't allowed to take us on field trips after that. So random, kid, I don't remember your name, but I remember you with great fondness. Thanks for listening.